This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bintliff, and Ryan Walter, who is the managing director, one of the illustrious team at ProCFO Partners, is with us today. And Ryan, I'm excited to talk to you today because we're talking about Philadelphia, Philly, which is, as you and I are talking about this, the Eagles are not, going to the Super Bowl, and we're all moving forward, and we're doing our best with that. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about business in Greater Philly. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the business dynamics at play? What are maybe some of the unexpected nuances that come into, especially that small and mid-market sort of dynamics in businesses in Greater Philly? So welcome, and let's start with, what do you mean by Greater Philly? What are we talking about when we're talking about kind of Philadelphia?
Well, Chris, to start, actually, I'd say at least Philadelphia fans can hold on to the Kelsey brothers and at least one half of the Kelsey brothers for a while here. It seems like no matter what Jason's doing in his career, he will always kind of be front and center. So regardless of the result in the playoffs, but
like the
more seriously, if we go to like what we mean, the Greater Philadelphia region is actually a very broad, diverse region. One I often call kind of an area of neighborhoods. It's an area where relationships matter. And if you're really looking at a map, it's kind of anywhere from South Jersey, sort of Princeton on below, all the way to almost the entire eastern part of Pennsylvania. So if you're familiar with kind of Pennsylvania, the Susquehanna River, how it strikes down the middle, that kind of Harrisburg, York area, all the way over to the east, up to the Pocono Mountains, to even parts of Delaware and eastern Maryland. So it is definitely a very wide and diverse area.
It's interesting that one of the words you or phrases that you said that just really popped out at me is it's a place where relationships matter. Tell me more about that, and especially kind of around the dynamics that you just shared. Does Greater Philly have an awareness of itself in those kind of relationships, or are there little pockets of got to keep this in mind and got to keep that in mind as you kind of move around this area?
We definitely work more in areas of pockets. And in fact, wherever you go, you will probably find someone who says, I've got a guy. I've got a guy who knows someone. I've got a guy who can help with this. And as you go certain places, there's definitely, even from the standpoint of where you are, sensitivities that I think you have to pay attention to. There's different economic impacts based on where you are. So there's a wide variety of things. And I think you have to stay vigilant and on top of that and understand that, if you're even in South Jersey, you can go everywhere from heavy economic, heavy manufacturing to heavy agriculture, and within 20 minutes of a drive. And those conversations and the needs are completely different for those organizations.
That's really interesting. Where do you find, I don't know, some of the expansion happening or some of the innovation happening where, I don't know, something new is happening, new organizations are coming in, technology or incubators are starting to be here and there? Are you finding that some of that agriculture is starting to be supplanted by, or some of that manufacturing space is starting to become a little bit more high tech, or is there kind of, this is kind of how it is, and these sort of sections have always made sense to us and we all kind of stay in that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a long legacy, right, of industry throughout the region. We're on the monopoly board, a couple of places, both the Reading and Pennsylvania railroads, and quite honestly, monopoly itself came out of Atlantic City, which is in South Jersey. For those not familiar with the region, and that history, there's still some strong anchors to that, but a lot has changed and a lot is changing. I think even from the agricultural perspective, there's still a heavy agricultural side, but now ag tech is really taking off, and you're seeing that pick up. We are a legacy Rust Belt state, particularly in Pennsylvania. And while, Billy Joel sung about what was going on in Allentown at times, you go to Allentown now, it's not the same. Advanced manufacturing and things like that are really taking off. The region in certain areas, you just find new life, new blood in what's going on. Biopharma, tech, services, even food processing. There's been a real change and a real kind of infusion of kind of lifeblood in a number of spots. So it's a real exciting area because go 5-10 minutes and you're going to kind of find something different.
That's fascinating. And thank you for bringing Billy Joel up. That's an extra point for you. Do you feel like that's, I guess, attitude of tradition or something? Is there kind of an entrenched look historically? We don't have in America, move west of Chicago, and we don't have a ton of history, but we do in Philadelphia. It's very rich. Do you find that culturally there's just kind of a lot of family business? There's a lot of sort of generational mindsets, even if it's not generational businesses. And do you find that, or do you find that new talent or new ideas are coming in and kind of rubbing against that? Is there friction there? Is it a welcome sort of change? Is there a technological sort of revolution happening, or is it kind of slow going? Like, what's the kind of attitude in general around kind of those pockets or those relationships you're talking about?
I think there's definitely a legacy of relationship and trust, which is important here. And that you will find that, and we have a high proportion of family business, small business around here, multi-generational family businesses. But I think, there is definitely push for innovation and change that you see, particularly as things move from generation to generation. That is definitely out there. But I think there's still, I would call it a healthy friction, which is good, a healthy friction between legacy and where we're going that is actually forcing us to ask good questions, right? It's not about change for change sake sometimes. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's needed. Sometimes, there's something to be learned behind why we did something 100 years ago. Sure, we're not, going to put horseshoes on horses anymore. Maybe we don't need farriers or whatever that may be there. But there was a reason why we built the service that way. There was something behind that. And perhaps that was lost. So I do think the dialogue's important, and we are seeing, a real investment in places like incubation spaces here, as I mentioned before, med tech, advanced manufacturing, where that's coming, forward. There's a lot of, I would say, overall investment in that kind of space that is driving some of the change. But there's still some wonderful legacy you can run into, fifth generation organizations talking about how they're driving forward. And it's wonderful, because when you hear about what that means and the great grandfather who started the organization in the 1800s, to me, that history tells us something, and it's important.
Oh, I love that. And I agree. We talk sometimes here at ProCFO Partners about how maybe an organization starts maybe a generation or two ago, or maybe 10 years ago, and your needs, particularly from your sort of financial functions, your team, are X. But as you grow, maybe your growth requires new skill sets, new attitudes, new perspectives, and maybe the people that you have on board need to either have a complement to help them see those things, or the team needs to go, or there needs to be something. So as you kind of put your CFO hat on, what do you recognize as sort of, these are some characteristics that I see a lot that I think might be kind of, we all experience these things, but in Philly, these are some things I see a lot. We've got challenges here, or we've got opportunities here, or we're really successful here. When you're looking at it through that lens, are there anything that kind of pops out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think where you're hitting on is what I tend to call the, what got us here won't get us there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of organizations face that at times. I think particularly here, just due to the nature of, the legacy of some of that, we may not realize it. From a financial perspective, the models we have in place got us to a point, but nobody asks why. Nobody asks why we're still running that way, or to understand that. And what it does is kind of create this challenge of not really having a sustainable or scalable model to grow with the organization and set a change with the times for what the organization needs. What does that mean? They tend to end up with sort of a lack of insight, a lack of ability to sort of make the right choices to help the business grow for the future. Or they continue to invest into that model, and it's sort of throwing good money over bad. I think from our side, because of that legacy, maybe we see a little more of, holding on to the traditional path. And we understand that, right? That's part of the culture of the organization. The people matter. And I think that's so critical to this. And it's not a negative on anyone, but looking back at that, when you have that mindset, you tend to pigeonhole yourself and you limit what the organization is able to do. So when you open yourself, maybe put the head a little bit above the ground at that point and start asking those hard questions. How does this support us where we want to go? What does this mean? I think, that's a really critical item that organizations need to undertake.
I think you make some really good points, and it speaks a little bit to me of the need of being intentionally maybe more agile or more flexible or ability to adapt more quickly or to recognize what's working and not working. We talk sometimes about how you can't build your revenue model when you start your business and never come back to it. You can't have a meeting in January and not hit some metrics, not look at the metrics that you're trying to hit until October. Like that, those things don't work yet. We're all, especially in small and mid-market, guilty of some of that. Part of what I'm hearing you say connects to me to the very intentional fractional model of ProCFO Partners, which is we want to bring some of that energy, some of that sort of that zest for the way we see things and the network that we have on our team, where we can kind of use different expertise to connect with what you're trying to do, or even help you see what you could be doing that you didn't even recognize. Talk to me a little bit about that benefit, that kind of advantage of we're not just trying to put another mind on your team, we're trying to bring new energy into your team, and that fractional model really complements that. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it really comes down to perspective too, right? I mean, for us, it's really important to make sure when we do match someone to the team that it's the right fit, and the right fit for the right reasons. We look across a broad spectrum of things. You'll often hear the term, you have to work on the business job, not just in the business. And that's a challenge for everyone, right? It's really easy to get stuck in the tactical work of every business. And I think for us, it's critical that we serve as a resource to help support organizations working on the business and working on where they're going. And it's not about adding another resource. It's about someone who is really helping you chart a path to the future, but not just like a consultant handing you a piece of paper and saying, here's where you go, but being there with you in the trenches to help execute on that and help execute on that change. So we're not just saying you need to change. It's, hey, we're here, we understand where we're going, and we're bought in on this with you, and we're going to help make sure this happens. And I think that's the key. And it's having that expertise. It's having the background of our CFOs who have been through this, who have seen it from a myriad of industries and situations, you name it, that they can bring that to bear and really help organizations avoid some of those roadblocks, those hurdles they may run into if they're doing it on their own.
And I love that you're kind of coming full circle to where you started around. It's a place where relationships matter. So as you are kind of a citizen of Philadelphia, and you kind of have this sensibility about not just the business that's being done, but how it's being done, with whom it's being done, what a handshake means over there. How does that inform your work as, a managing director, as a person who connects with the companies that you're working with, as kind of a pro CFO? What are you looking for when you're having those conversations and your mind is like, what this person could really use, or I want to make this introduction? Is it easy for you to kind of, I see what you need and I'm the guy to talk to about that because you have this kind of relationship minded, kind of centric approach?
For me, it's the reason I'm here, and I love doing it. And in fact, I enjoy that opportunity to help organizations. And I think for us as an organization here, and for myself, we view it as we are bought into the success of the organizations we help, the clients we work with. And it's not the success as just the CFO, it's their success. How do we help them achieve that? Whether it's a HR problem they're dealing with, and how do we connect them with the right resource there that might help them? Because if that's not working, the rest of the organization isn't working. So it's not just the work we're doing, it's being bought in. It's thinking about, how do we help this company get to where they're going? How do we help them not struggle with this problem for a couple months? And can we introduce them and connect them with great people? We really subscribe to working with people we like, know, and trust. And by surrounding ourselves with those individuals, and individuals who are really committed to the success of organizations as a whole, not just for the service they're there to deliver, but for the success as a whole, that creates a wonderful ecosystem of people committed to that overall result and the overall growth trajectory of that organization.
I love this quick illustration you used of if HR isn't working. I think that's important to touch on because there's a subset of people who realize, team, we really need a fractional CFO to come in here, or we really need somebody to come in here and kind of represent us from that CFO, seat on the table and help us with this. But many organizations are just experiencing something and they don't know what they don't know and who could help with that. Do you have some, especially thinking, specifically about that greater Philly area, are there some symptoms that I might be experiencing that are for you? This is a great time to just pick up the phone or hit the website and let's just have a conversation, even if you don't understand how somebody might help.
Sure. And we're always happy to connect with folks on any. If it doesn't need to be related to CFO thing, if we can be a resource, we enjoy that and we enjoy the opportunity to do that. But a couple of things come to mind. One might be, do you even have the right information to make informed and insightful decisions? Where we hear that often, where they're just not getting the right information. That's a great lead into an opportunity and a chance to talk. It could also be they want to grow, but they don't know how. What are going to be the steps? What are the decisions and choices I need? I don't have that roadmap there, and I don't really have that visibility for where I go. And the other thing may be we're trying to grow, but we're spinning our wheels. It's just not happening the way we want. Things aren't tied together. We have the best intentions, but we're not going where we need to go. I think all those are great examples of times where more than happy to connect with organizations, listen and hear what's happening, and provide whatever insight we can to help support them in that journey, regardless of what it means for us from a commercial perspective within ProCFO Partners. How do we help them along their growth journey and path?
I love that. And, I say often, you don't need to know that you have how to solve the problem. You just need to know that something could be better, and then bring in new minds and new mindsets to sort of help you explore that. And I think that's a great sort of perspective and a great approach that ProCFO Partners just regularly kind of look. We just love to talk to people. We just love to help out. Don't worry about the details. Let's have the conversation to see how we can connect. And I feel like, Ryan, you're so emblematic of that. Every conversation we have, even when we're off the podcast and we're just kind of kicking things around, I'm so grateful for your expertise and your generosity with it, and just kind of your general personality and your approach to this work and the people that you do it with. It's refreshing and it's interesting and it's professional and it's on point, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much. Ryan Walter is Managing Director at ProCFO Partners, and he is in Philly, and he is the guy to talk to in Greater Philadelphia, and we are grateful for your time today.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.